Scotland's largest teaching union, the EIS, says that today's survey paints a very worrying picture of life in the classroom. Its General Secretary, Andrea Bradley, came into the studio. Andrea, we've heard about these quite stark statistics. What's it like being a teacher in a classroom just now?
Well, I think it's more difficult than it should be and more difficult than it needs to be where our education service properly resourced. I think the data that the EIS has collected and that has been, confirmed with the Behaviour in Scottish Schools research published today indicates that violence and aggression and distressed and disruptive behaviour are growing issues in our schools. EIS and others have been sounding the alarm on this for some time now. Unfortunately, that seems to have fallen on deaf ears to a large extent, but we hope that the survey data that we've gathered, the Scottish Government stats that have been published today, will finally induce some action, some decision making in the right direction, and that has to begin for us with resources. And
give us a sense of what it's like at the blackboard, whiteboard face, if you like. Are teachers facing violence? I mean, I know what the stats are saying, but just give us an idea of what that might be.
So I think teachers increasingly are experiencing verbal abuse, sometimes physical abuse, sometimes that is resulting in hospitalisations, sometimes resulting in teachers being unable to attend work. I think that the stress for many teachers of working in that kind of environment is impacting on their attendance at school, and many of them are off with work-related stress as a result of the kind of violence and aggression that they're experiencing far too frequently and over a long period of time. So that's quite a common occurrence now amongst the teaching profession. In years gone by, that would have been more of a rarity than it is now, and I'm really concerned that we're seeing that as more of a norm, and there's been a kind of normalisation of that behaviour rather than us seeing that as an exception. But we think that that's down to a multiplicity of factors. Young people over the last very short while, decade or so, have suffered really quite a lot, faced really quite a lot by way of challenge. We've had more than a decade of austerity. We've got a quarter of children in Scotland living in poverty, so that comes with all of the challenges and traumas associated with that. We had a mental health crisis that was burgeoning pre-pandemic that has been compounded by the pandemic, and to our mind there hasn't been the investment in education recovery that really there needed to be post-pandemic. And on top of that, we have now 34% of children in our schools with a recognised additional support need, and as that need has been rising and growing in complexity, we've seen the number of additional support needs teachers, support staff, educational psychologists, speech and language therapists, English as an additional language staff diminishing, and that's just been created a perfect storm such as we're seeing now in these statistics.
Are we making excuses for children though? Should children just know how to behave?
Children have to be taught how to behave. It's part of their socialisation, part of their development.
So is that a fault of the home, the parents?
It's not anyone's fault. I think that we also have to understand that if there are 25% of our children living in poverty, that's at least 25% of parents who are living in poverty. So lots of parents have got lots of challenges to face themselves. We know that the mental health
itself doesn't mean bad behaviour.
Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. But what I was going to say was that the mental health crisis we know is not exclusive to young people. There are many adults who are struggling with mental health, and we know that with the strains on the NHS, they're not all getting the support that they really need to be able to address those difficulties. But it is fair to say that that kind of early learning around what's acceptable behaviour, how we treat one another, with respect and dignity, that does begin at home. But it is also true to say that many parents also need support with that kind of learning themselves. The ideal scenario is parents working in concert with schools and teachers to support young people in order that we get the best experiences.
Is that happening though? Are parents being supportive of teachers?
Many parents are supportive of teachers. In school communities the length and breadth of the country, parents work very well with teachers, and of course over the course of the pandemic that partnership was really brilliant in lots of circumstances. And I think that parents' understanding of the jobs that teachers do, the complexity of the work that teachers do, was really appreciated by parents when, for example, there was the lockdown, experiences of lockdown, and it was kind of over to parents to support young people with their learning at home. I think that brought a new sharpness of understanding of how difficult a job it is to be a teacher, and a new respect perhaps for teachers and the important work that they do.
Should the focus not be on the well-behaved children whose education has been disrupted rather than the children that are causing the disruption?
Well, our education system is for all children and young people. Every child has the right to a quality education, and regardless
But many
of
them have been denied that because of misbehaviour.
Regardless of that child's background, they have a right to education. Children need different kinds of supports in order to be able to access that right, in order to be able to realise that right. And from our point of view, the investment in our education system is not sufficiently enabling every single child to realise their full entitlements to a quality education. Now, that of course means that some young people need more than others by way of that specialist support. They might need more one-to-one time with their teachers, but all of that should be possible. We are one of the richest countries in the world. We should be able to fund our education system properly in order that every child gets all that they can out of the education that is on offer to them. And if we don't do that, if we don't fund education properly in the here and now, we will be paying the price of that for decades, generations to come, because there will be health inequalities, employability issues, addiction issues, and all sorts of problems that will arise from not properly educating our young people through investing in our system.
Andrea Bradley, thanks for joining us in Scotland tonight.